I'm Julie Mason, so pleased to welcome back to the show Ambassador John Bolton. He's former assistant to the President for National Security. You can follow him at AMB John Bolton. Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year.
Now, I think we all watched with some trepidation over the holiday things going on in the Red Sea. From your perspective, what do we need to know about this?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is that it really is part of a larger picture in the Middle East as a whole, connected to the Hamas attack on Israel, connected to the exchange of missiles between Hezbollah in Lebanon and Israel, and attacks on American service members and civilian personnel by Shia militia groups in Syria and Iraq. And it's really all part of an Iranian strategy. They call it the Ring of Fire strategy, to put pressure on Israel and its friends, particularly the United States. This activity by the Houthis has the most direct international effect, because they have come very close to closing the Red Sea to international commercial traffic through the Suez Canal into the Mediterranean. And that could obviously have a huge impact. 12% of the world's trade goes through the Suez Canal. The U.S. has taken some steps, and over the weekend did sink 3 Houthi boats that had been engaged in the attacks. But so far, whatever we've done, whatever it's been, has not been enough to deter the Houthis or Iran from ceasing their activity. So it remains, I think, a very active threat.
So their strategy is somewhat working.
I think it is, and I think part of the success is the Biden administration won't acknowledge the Iran connection. These are not discrete events in different parts of the region carried out by different people. It's coordinated. I'm not saying it looks like an organization chart in an American corporation any more than the NATO alliance looks like that kind of chart. But this is not happening out of coincidence. These events, these different events, are happening because Iran wants them to happen as part of a larger strategy. I don't think we fully know what that strategy is, other than I think they believe Israel's government is vulnerable. I think they're worried about developments in the region, the exchange of diplomatic relations, the Abraham Accords between Israel and some of the Arab states, and the prospect it would happen in Saudi Arabia, and also as yet another way to distract the United States from Iran's continuing pursuit of nuclear weapons. So Iran has a lot of things at stake here, and I think until we recognize the larger threat that all of these activities taken as a whole represent, we're not going to deal with any of the specifics effectively.
Ambassador, when this war started, there was a huge effort or concentration by the U.S. to keep it from expanding and bringing Iran into it, sort of a containment strategy. Has that been effective?
Well, I think it's been flawed from the beginning, because Iran is already involved in it. Iran is the funder, the trainer, the arms provider, the intelligence provider to all of these groups. And the idea that somehow we will be better off if we don't deal with the problem itself simply means we're going to see the problem expand. Until you reestablish deterrence with Iran, and we have clearly not done that, they're going to continue to push. And what that means is that either Israel or the United States is going to have to make the groups other than Hamas come to understand that whatever they may gain from their activities, the cost, the pain to them will be far greater. That's how you create deterrence. That failed, obviously, in the case of Hamas, which is what started all this on October the 7th. And now Israel is forced to the point where it will have to destroy Hamas in order to be free of the threat. So nobody wants the broader conflict, but it's, as in so many cases throughout history, when you're being attacked like this and you simply try to contain the problem, you're actually making the problem worse, because the adversary you're worried about doesn't think you're strong enough to resist them.
What is your assessment of Netanyahu's standing right now? Is he vulnerable? Is that a vulnerability?
Well, I think public opinion polls in Israel are pretty close to unanimous that the population thinks after this war in Gaza is over, that his government should step down. And, there's precedent for that if you go back to 1973 and the Yom Kippur War, where Israel was totally surprised by the Arab attacks, and ultimately, although they emerged quite successful militarily from the Yom Kippur War, Golda Meir's government fell as a result. But I think everybody in Israel sees how divided the country is on domestic issues. Now we've had over the weekend this decision by the Constitutional Court invalidating part of Netanyahu's judicial reform program. My take, the early reaction in Israel is we disagree on this, but we're in the interest of national unity. All sides are prepared to kind of defer going back to fighting over that until after the war with Hamas is over, which from Israel's point of view I think is the right thing to do. But the divisions are real, and I think it was something the outside world could see, and the Israelis are going to have to work them out, because part of what goes with a democracy is having debates that divide people, and that has historically been attractive to authoritarian regimes. They see it as an opportunity.
Well, there does seem to be some danger in the idea that Netanyahu sees this conflict as a way to stay in power, and that when it's over, he'll probably lose that position.
Well, I haven't spoken to Netanyahu. I don't know what's on his mind, but there are plenty of people in his own government now, which is a broader coalition than when he was in power before the war, that contain a number of people who think they're going to be prime minister someday. So whatever Netanyahu's view is, he's going to have plenty of people contesting it. And I think people should appreciate how united Israel is to continue, for example, to pursue the elimination of Hamas. It's not like there's some big division about that. And I think as long as they maintain unity on that point, and as long as there is a broad coalition running the war effort, Netanyahu's presence in office is just much less of an issue.
And going back to Iran, Ambassador, is there a scenario where, from their perspective, an expanded conflict could be in their interests?
Well, I think what they're hoping is that through the Ring of Fire strategy, to put enough pressure on Israel to regain the initiative across the region, which they were in danger of losing, as the Gulf Arab states in particular began to see Iran really just as in the same threatening way that Israel has long seen Iran. And they may think that the U.S., as they can see from the split that's emerging, I think quite visibly between Israel and the United States over how to handle Hamas, might be another way to damage Israel. I worry that if they are continuing, and I believe they are continuing to pursue nuclear weapons, that if we don't deal with the Iranian threat to peace and security in the region before they get nuclear weapons, they will be almost infinitely harder to deal with after they get nuclear weapons.
Ambassador, over the holiday as well, we saw some disturbing developments in Ukraine, and this sort of sets up the debate in Congress over funding for both these conflicts. I wonder what you expect there.
Well, I think funding for both should have been approved in December. I think it may be a little bit naive, but I think you have to look at what's in America's interest, and providing the assistance in both cases was. It's now been tied up in a debate over the southern border, and I certainly agree with those in Congress who think Biden has made a mess of our immigration policy across the border. My only hope is that the president has indicated he would deal, and that he can reach a deal with Republicans on Mexico border policy to free up these other important aid pieces. It's not the perfect measure of how the government runs, but we're in a presidential election year, and I think we all need to get used to the fact it's going to be this way for the next 11 months.
Indeed. There was some fascinating reporting from Bloomberg about middle-class Chinese citizens coming into the U.S. through the Mexican border because of the bad economy there.
Well, I think part of the problem with illegal immigration is that refugee status should not be granted to people who are coming simply for economic reasons. You get asylum because of persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution on political, religious, ethnic reasons. But I do think that in the case of China, the economy is bad. I think the government in Beijing fudges its economic statistics. That's a polite way of putting it. And that a lot of people are coming. Some of them may be eligible for political asylum. I can think of tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of citizens from Hong Kong who, having seen their separate system crushed 4 years ago by Xi Jinping, who want political asylum, and I think from the perspective of the United States, we would be advantaged by having a lot of those people come in the legal way, and we'll grant them asylum directly.
Ambassador John Bolton, former assistant to the president for national security. You can find him at AMB John Bolton. Always a pleasure, Ambassador. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Julie Mason. This is SiriusXM.